Hi, Facebook. So we're back again, hopefully with better connection for all of you, and we are talking about medical marijuana in the state of Ohio.
That's right. So we're marching up against the September 8th deadline to get Ohio's medical marijuana program up and running. That's right around the corner.
It is.
And we're at this point in time where September 8th is going to be here before we know it, and some pretty significant bumps in the road have already started occurring. In the last month, a lawsuit's already been filed. The auditor, Ohio Auditor David Yost, is doing a review of Ohio's handling an award process for handing out cultivation licenses. The state awarded 24 cultivation licenses to firms late last year. There's been a lot of questions around that process. It was discovered that at least one of the individuals who was in charge of scoring these applications, more than 100 applications came in for a chance at one of these business licenses. One of the scorers actually had a felony background, right? So they were committed of some felony drug crimes. So there's questions around that individual and sort of the, why an individual with felony background was allowed to be a part of this panel of scorers. There's other questions around just the process in general. Was it a fair and equitable process for the more than 100 cultivators who put in an application? And then we have Senator Bill Coley, who's asked the auditor to take his review one more step. Senator Coley's introduced some legislation calling for a full audit of this process. He expects that legislation to get passed by the end of March. If so, there would be about a 60-day time period where the auditor would conduct his full review, and then the Department of Commerce, which is handling the review process and the business license process, the Department of Commerce would have another 30 days to implement any changes that it needs. The real question is, has there been sort of enough mistakes or big enough mistakes made in that cultivation scoring process that Ohio could potentially be forced to rescore all of these more than 100 applications? So the big question is, could any of these items in play seriously delay or derail the program?
And we have been talking in our other broadcasts, people pay a lot of money for the chance to cultivate, correct?
They did, yeah. So more than 100 businesses applied for a cultivation license in Ohio. Large folks who were vying to be a large grower had to pay $20,000 for their application fee. Small growers were looking at a $3,000 application fee. In addition to that, they had to share that they had in their applications to the state, that they had the financial wherewithal, which takes hundreds of thousands of dollars to run a cultivation operation. So we're not talking about small amounts of money here. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some of these companies have gone out and raised millions of dollars to build out their program in here in Ohio. And there's some question about, what does that September 8th deadline mean to them? And if it were to get pushed back, what would that do for their businesses?
Hi, so we're seeing some of the questions for you guys here.
Thanks for joining us,
Thank you
guys.
so much for joining us. So Heather, we had just said how much it was for a chance. So yeah, it is kind of expensive to get a chance to actually cultivate, have the possibility to maybe cultivate medical marijuana in Ohio.
Yeah, so
it's not refundable if you don't get it.
Yeah, for the folks that applied who didn't land a license, they, if they were a large grower applicant, they lost out on $20,000. Ohio has actually some of the highest fees in place. When you look across the country at the way different states have structured their medical marijuana programs, Ohio is on the pricier side. So one thing that we're told by Senator Bill Coley is that, the effort there, his call for a full review, isn't meant to delay the program, that he thinks that anyone who landed a provisional license can continue to march forward, building their plan, and then questions could get answered, or there could be some decisions made once that audit is finished, 60 days after it begins. So that's what we're hearing, that we think as long as no major flaws come out of this audit, that Ohio could continue marching toward that September 8th deadline without any problem. But again, a lot of questions sort of circling around the program as we see things like lawsuits being filed, and just a lot of questions about, was this a fair and equitable
Sure.
equitable process for those who applied for the cultivation license.
And so you do have a story on WCPO.com explaining more of this, and this will be on tonight at 7?
That's right. Yeah, we have more details coming for you at 7 tonight. Lots of details, not only with this story explaining sort of the most recent legal snafus on WCPO.com, but we also just recently did a story about sort of what could be at stake if not enough physicians get the certification that they need in order to be able to prescribe or to recommend medical marijuana. If you think about the way that this program has been built in Ohio, doctors really have their hands sort of on the spigot of how quickly the
Sure.
plan can roll out. If you don't have enough physicians prescribing, or rather recommending medical marijuana to their patients who are seeking it, then that becomes a real supply and demand issue
does,
at the end of the day. So, we're kind of exploring all facets of this, ways that, there's some innovation being driven here in Ohio because of the medical marijuana program, relative to how it is that money can exchange hands within this
Sure,
program.
sure.
Because marijuana is federally illegal, many banks, many financial institutions don't want to have anything to do with a business that's dealing in medical marijuana. So there's a real question about, who's going to handle the money
Sure.
here coming and flowing through these businesses. And there's been some proposals of what's called a closed loop payment system that would operate kind of like a prepaid credit card.
Okay.
That would be a major innovation created here in Ohio for the medical marijuana industry nationally, right? There's no state that has really solved that problem. So there's, those kinds of stories on WCPO.com, and then a lot of stories just sort of keeping us up to speed with where things are what some of these hiccups look like.
Thank you so much. So
Yeah.
everyone, we're going to post a link to this story here in the comment section after we're done, and we'll try to answer some of the questions that are in there too. And be sure to join Lisa and Kristen Hartman tonight.
All right,
Thank you
thanks.
guys.